welcome back to my channel. My name is Dani and I'm back with another cooking break with Dani. Today we're gonna cook and it's been a hot minute, but I was waiting for my kitchen to look a little bit more presentable for you guys the next time that I did a cooking video for you guys. It's still mildly under construction. There's still some things I need to do around here, but I wanted to get back to cooking for you guys. And what better way to come back than with tacos? Just saying. If you guys know anything about me and my relationship with Parker, you know that it is founded on a deep, profound foundation of our love of tacos. So we're gonna talk about tacos today. Today we're going to make my mom's top secret taco recipe, which won't be very top secret after I publish this video, but she's my mom and has to forgive me. This is a taco meat that she has done for years, and I never believed her how easy it was until I saw it for myself. But to this day, when she comes to visit, she will make about 10 pounds of chuck and store it in freezer bags, and I will have it every single time I want one of my mom's tacos. So this chuck meat actually freezes beautifully, defrosts and reheats beautifully. It's delicious. My pickiest son likes it. Now, it does have toppings that are kind of adult only or generally adult only, like onions, cilantro, salsa. However, it is very good over spinach or lettuce with a dressing. It is absolutely 100% delicious. And when you see how easy it is, you are not going to believe me. Like all of my cooking videos, the ingredient list and steps will be listed in the description box below. I am a very, what's the word? It's easier for me to teach you how to make something by describing it and showing it to you than by typing it out. So if you want to gain additional knowledge as to why I'm doing certain things, make sure you actually watch the video and listen to what I say, because you can follow the step-by-step recipe in the description box, but if you watch me do it, I think it's easier for you to understand the science behind it and why things are done a certain way. That way, if you thought about doing a shortcut, you might think against it. Or if you thought about changing an ingredient or an amount, you might think against it. So it is explained along the way why certain things are done the way they are. Now, this is going to be a 2-day video for me because I'm making the meat today and then I will be serving it tomorrow. So you are going to see 2 different takes in this video. The meat is actually currently in the oven right now, but what you guys will need is some chuck. That is the toughest, one of the toughest cuts of beef on a steer cattle. It is extremely fibrous, it is cheap, but it is very hard to cook. It has to be done in a very low and slow fashion if you want to make it even remotely a little bit delicious. So this is something that you would roast. This is something that would go in an Instapot, in a crock pot, something that you have hours to spend on. You need a ton of garlic and onion. Literally a ton. If you fast forward, you're gonna see how much we actually use for 5 pounds of chuck. You are going to need taco toppings, not lettuce and shredded cheese and tomato cubes. No, not those kinds of taco toppings, like real taco toppings. Diced onion, some chopped cilantro, lemons, and salsa verde. And you're gonna need corn tortillas. This taco meat tastes good in flour tortillas, but it tastes the way it's meant to taste in corn tortillas. Plus, corn tortillas are gluten-free. So if you guys want to see how I make this delicious, amazing, life-changing taco meat, all you have to do is keep on watching. All right, you guys, we gotta peel a bunch of onions and garlic. I mean, a ridiculous amount. So there is no shortcuts on how to do this. The benefit is that it doesn't need to be pretty because you're baking for a very long time, which means the onions are gonna fall apart anyway. So this isn't something where you need to pay too much attention to your knife skills, with the exception of, obviously, always maintaining safety. So what I like to do is cut the top and bottom off and then peeling the skin. This is actually my mom's secret recipe. I don't know if it's gonna be secret after this. But she cuts her onions in rings, and she's always cut them in rings, and even though I've told her that it's a lot easier to cut them this way, she will cut the top and the bottom off, and then she will peel with her hand around the onion so that she's able to cut it in rings. This is just a lot easier for me, so in terms of peeling. You guys know I like to do everything fast. It's a problem, but I like to do everything fast. So this helps. Open can. At this point, it's really up to you if you want to do slices or if you want to do rings, but as long as they're about this thick, that's kind of what you're going for. Garlic, there's a lot of gadgets, there's a lot of tools, there's a lot of pre-peeled garlic, there's pre-minced garlic. I have my thoughts on all of them. My favorite way to peel garlic is by smashing it with a knife. That's just what's easiest for me. It's what's always worked for me. If you're going to buy pre-peeled garlic, that's okay. Make sure you keep it in the freezer, but pre-minced garlic is not my favorite because usually it's filled with preservatives, either oil or some sort of alternative preservative that I don't like. So I'll usually peel them in advance and freeze them, or I'll peel them as I need them. There is a big, big difference between fresh garlic and pre-peeled garlic or pre-minced garlic. Pre-minced garlic is good, you know, when you're in a pinch. But other than that, if you can get the fresh stuff or the whole stuff, that's what you want to go for. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to separate a bunch of cloves, and then we'll smash them and peel them at the same time. A little shortcut if you have a whole head of garlic is if you kind of put a little weight on it, bear some weight, it breaks apart. And all you do is just kind of zhuzh it around a little bit and the cloves come off of it real easy. It's the peeling part that takes some time, but it's so worth it if you really are able to notice the flavor difference. It's a really big, big, big difference. So I just took a whole pack of garlic cloves, and now what I'm gonna do is remove the excess trash so that it doesn't get on my cutting board. You guys, this meat cooks for such a long time that you could drop a shoe in here and you won't even notice. So the easiest way for me is with a knife, you're going to flip it with the blade facing side out. And then you'll take your clove and lay it on a flat side, not on a rocking side, on a flat side, and you'll give it a bang. 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 Imagine if I said bang after every clove. So after a good smash, you kind of just wiggle it a little bit and the peel comes right off, and boom, you throw it with the onions. So I'll show you guys another one. Just give it a little wiggle, little wiggle, and the peel comes right off. Here's the third one, little wiggle, and the peel comes right off. So we're gonna do the rest of these 3 heads, and after that I'll show you guys how we prep the meat, and we'll basically be done for the prep part of this recipe. The waiting game, that's what's hard. All right, you guys, as toppings for these tacos, we use 3 things besides salsa: onions, lemons, and cilantro. So you guys know I'm a fan of knead it twice, chop it once. I have my cutting board out, I have my knife out, I just cut onions. I'm gonna use onions again, so we're gonna get it all done now, put it in the fridge, and be ready to go so that we can actually enjoy the party tomorrow. So we're cutting some lemons, and lemons are actually, if you wanna get the maximum juice out of your lemons, you cut them the opposite way you would think. So when you see them at a restaurant, they're cut into wedges, so from end to end, and they're actually cut into wedges. If you wanna get juice out of them, like you want them to actually work for you, you cut them in half the way you think you wouldn't. So kind of like how I did here, how you could see all the wedges. And then I like to cut mine in 3s. So I'll show you guys again. Take your lemon, opposite sides, cut it straight through the middle, and then cut it, oh, this is a beautiful lemon. Cut it in 3s. All right, the next thing we're going to cut is some onion. And the onion for this, we're actually using this for rice, and we're actually going to use it for the tacos. So I'm gonna cut it in half, and then I'll reserve the other half for my rice. So this is the half that's going to be for topping your tacos. Actually, you know what? Now that I look at it, this is a really small onion. I'm probably gonna need more than this. Let's do a whole onion, because Parker by himself would eat an entire onion. Oh no, sorry Parker. Well, actually, you know, there's a lot of onion people around here. So for that, I'm gonna go in sideways. I'm basically cutting them into long strips. So you're following the length of the onion. Right now what you're doing is a small dice. So all of these are little tiny onion pieces, small dice. So I'll show you guys a close-up so you can see what I'm talking about. So if you look at the onion, it was cut into like half moons and then into little sections. So you have even size little dice of onion. All right, you guys, I'm gonna show you again. So you're gonna go in sideways. This obviously looks a little weird to some of you guys because I'm left-handed. So imagine if you were right-handed, you're gonna go in this way. So this is where the half moon of the onion is. You're following the curve of the half moon. So never do this, never, never. You wanna hug the handle of the knife. All right, you guys, 2 big, giant, massive bunches of cilantro. I like to buy the ones that are more bushy, shorter stems. There are a lot of cilantro that gets cut really stemmy, and it's not worth it, you know? So look for the ones that are like short and stocky and really bunchy. Those are the freshest ones. I don't mind the stems. A lot of people do. Honestly, I could eat the whole thing. Are you the soapy cilantro person where you can't have cilantro? We probably can't be friends. So I take my knife and I kind of shave down. This is gonna be messy. I usually use a bigger cutting board, but I had to use my Coffee Break with Dani cutting board, you guys. So you start to see where it's starting to get just stems. And I save this, I put a rubber band around it. I save it, I put a rubber band, and I throw it in broth. And it's the base of the broth for all my soups. All of my soups have half an onion and a bunch of cilantro. All of them. All of them, except maybe minestrone. Now kind of run a little inspection. If you see any stems that are really, really stemmy, since I'm having a party, I want to look like I tried a little harder. So pull those out and then just do a really arbitrary pass with your knife over the leaves. You don't want to cut your cilantro too much because it will turn black. You also don't want to cut it too small because you want it to be pretty. It's what's going to go on the very top of your tacos. So you want it to look almost like a garnish, even though it is going to add an insane amount of flavor. When you're cutting herbs, don't squeeze them, hold them. So remember when your baby's learning how to walk and you have to hold their arms, their wrists, or their hands so they could stay up, but you also don't want to hold them up so that they can hold themselves up? That's kind of what you're doing here. You're just kind of keeping it together, but you are not squishing it. If your knife isn't sharp, all you're going to do right now is bruise the cilantro, and you don't want to bruise it. All you're doing is cutting straight through. You want to hear the actual cut, not a smash. Does that make sense? I'm cutting it. See? Cut, 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 cut. So it still looks like cilantro, but it's small enough where you can take a little pinch of it and put it in your tacos. So take that and we're gonna put it in a bowl. Don't jam it in the bowl. You just kind of lightly place it in the bowl. You don't want to smash it because when people go to serve themselves, they'll grab way more cilantro than they really want to. So just lightly airy put it in the bowl. All right, so our party's tomorrow. We already have the diced onion, the sliced lemon, and the cilantro ready to go. The only thing we'd need to do tomorrow is take the lid off a jar of salsa, which I'll show you guys which one I use. I know it sounds like, maybe you should be making your own salsa, but this salsa in particular really elevates the flavor of all these ingredients together. It just kind of ties it together. I can't explain it to you. It is the brand, it's the make, it's the ingredients in that salsa. It just really makes this taco. So I'm going to throw a lid on these and pop them in the fridge, and I'll show you guys how we cook the meat. All right, you guys, what we're gonna do right now is a little, I wouldn't recommend it unless you have experience with food handling and the safety of handling food. So what we're gonna do right now is we're going to put raw meat in this roaster just to season it, then we'll sear it, and then we'll put it back in this pan. So while I would normally not recommend that, there is no sense in soiling an additional pan when it's gonna go right back into this one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys which cut of meat I purchased, how I season it, and why, and then we'll go sear it on the stove and put it right back in here, covered in foil, and throw it in the oven for a few hours. So the best cut of meat for these tacos is chuck. Chuck is notoriously tough because the chuck is actually the shoulders or the back of cattle or steer. It is very muscular. You can see it's quite lean, and it's extremely tough. It's used for roast for a reason. Low and slow for a very long time will make it tender. Another thing that will make it tender is knowing how and when to season it. So I'm going to take out these 2 cuts of chuck that I bought, and I'm gonna throw them in here just so that it makes seasoning easier. When you, and this is very important, when you buy your cuts of chuck, try to buy them as evenly thick as possible. So you want the thickness between the 2 cuts of meat to be very similar. These were the only 2 I could find at my grocery store, and you could tell this one's about ½ an inch thicker than this one. So it's important that they're even thickness because you're gonna throw them in at the oven at the same time, and it just helps the process. We don't want this one to cook a lot faster than this one. Right now, all we're going to do is season it with pepper. No salt, no garlic salt, no sea salt, no form of sodium, no form of salt, nothing salty. If you were to add salt here, it draws out the liquid in the meat and it dries it out. The whole reason why we're searing it is to seal in the juices. If I were to put salt right now, all the juices come out. So what I'm gonna do is just heavily season it with pepper, throw it on a very hot skillet, sear in the juices, throw it in the oven. Once the meat is done, I'll add my salt. This is a debate I always have with my mom, whether we use fresh cracked pepper or this kind that you buy at the store. When we make this meat, we do about 10 pounds chuck at once because we freeze it, and either she brings it here, she brings some home. So you could definitely go with the purely ground, or you could do the freshly ground pepper. This one's spicier, this one's fresher, so you need to use less of it. But most of us have this at home, so that's why I'm gonna show you guys using this one. I would use this one, but I would know exactly how much of it to use. When I use this one, I could show you and you could totally copy the recipe visually. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna generously season the top, and then I'm going to flip it. And I'm gonna do the other side. You see all that fiber? All that fibrous tissue? That would be impossible to do like a high heat cooking. Like if I were to saute this on the stove and pretend that it was delicious, there's no way. This is a type of meat that is very low fat, high in ligaments and like fibrous tissue, so you need to cook it for a very long time. Now we're gonna take this over to the stove and we're gonna give it a really good sear after my co-pilot over here, my sous chef, investigates. right, you guys, what you just saw was me searing the meat. Searing the meat is essential to creating a very juicy meat or roast or whatever you're doing. What you're doing when you sear is you cook the outside of the meat and trap all the juices in. So as the meat is cooking, it's staying inside of itself. So you wanna make sure you're using a very high heat. I start off at a high heat. I drop it to a medium low. Right now it's smoking, which means it's too hot. You wanna be safe, okay? So if it's smoking, don't go. Don't put your meat, don't start, because you could actually set your pan on fire. If you are smoking like this and you crank up the heat or put any product in there that's flammable, it could catch on fire. So you have to be really careful. So what I do is I start off at a high heat, I turn it down to medium, and then I put the meat in and start searing it. Sear it on all sides, including the sides of the chuck steak. If you're using a cold, out of the fridge steak, make sure you compensate your heat value. So I'm starting at a medium heat because it's already smoking. I put my cold steak in there. I'm gonna crank up the heat to high to compensate for that temperature drop from cold meat. So right now, I dropped it to low because it was smoking. I'm gonna turn it up to medium. I'm gonna grab my steak and I'm going to drop it. Be careful. The steak is cold. Turn up your heat to high. You want to get some golden caramelization on your meat. That's how you know it's perfectly seared. So when your steak, your meat, whatever you're cooking changes color, that's the coagulation of the protein, which is what you want to see. If it hasn't caramelized or turned this color, you haven't seared it properly and the juices will come out. Ideally, we're going to shred this beef, so it's not a big deal, but you want to keep it as juicy as long as possible. All right, you guys, the very last step is to make sure that your beef is sitting on plenty of garlic and onions. You saw how much is on here. We're gonna tightly wrap it in foil and put it in an oven at 350 degrees. We are going to cook it for about 45 minutes per pound. This is about 5 to 6 pounds of meat. So it's gonna be in there for the majority of the day. When you know it's done is when it's falling apart. I mean, you just rub it between your fingers and it falls apart. It falls apart into tiny, tiny little shreds of beef. That's what we're looking for. The garlic and the onion are going to caramelize and they're going to turn into almost like a gravy with this meat. And we're just gonna kind of fork separate it. We're gonna shred it with forks and it's gonna be perfection. The very last step for this is garlic salt. The very last step will be to season with salt. So right now, covered in foil, throw it in the oven at 350. All right, you guys, so I just pulled this out of the oven. It was actually in there for almost 4 hours. Now, depending on the size of your roasting pan, you might get a lot of loss of fluid. It's totally fine. If you pour in some beef stock in there, some chicken stock, or even some water to rehydrate it, it'll work just fine. But what you want to do now is you're going to take either 2 forks, a tongue and a fork, anything to be able to shred it, and it needs to fall apart without much effort. So, I mean, you see how easy it's coming apart? And all of the garlic and everything around there falls apart with it. If you see any really, really fibrous stuff left behind, kind of like ligamenty, tough meat, you can actually pull that out. My mom has a really good eye and is able to fish it out real easy. So once you've shredded all of the beef, you're going to take some garlic salt and be super, super, super generous with it. So remember, we haven't salted it at all. So you're going to take some garlic salt and you're going to be very generous Remember, if you over season, you can't take it back. So always under season and then check. I'm going to pour a little bit of water in here and then cover it back up and leave it alone. And since we won't be using it until tomorrow, I'll show you guys how I reheat it and how I actually serve it. So keep going, keep shredding. You can actually shred a little bit better if it gets a little cooler because you can use your hands. I personally like to use my hands. But for now, for purposes of safety and sanitation, we're just gonna keep going with 2 forks and just a little bit of water. And you can see the garlic, the onions, they've completely just melted into the beef. Alright you guys, there we have the final product. So remember I told you that these tacos would not be these tacos without an amazing salsa? The next time you guys go to a Target or a Walmart, pick up this salsa. It's very good. They also have it in hot. Mild is absolutely delicious because it's slightly tart and tangy, and it really elevates the flavor of these tacos because they have that caramel sort of really savory and smoky flavor from the onions and the garlic that were in the oven for so long. Now, if you want the recipe for this here, stay tuned because that's coming up in the next few weeks. All right, you guys, this concludes this cooking break with Dani. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to know more information on this recipe or anything that I forgot will be listed in the description box of this video, including the makeup tutorial for the makeup I'm wearing today. That will also be linked in the description box of this video. If you guys have any questions or any requests, please leave those in the comment section below. But other than that, I think that's it. I mean, who doesn't like tacos, right? I still owe you guys the tortilla hack video, don't I? I think I might do this right after I get done filming this video because so many of you guys continue to ask me, why do you wet your tortillas? I need to show you guys. Like, let's be honest, I need to show you that video. So if it's live, I will link it in the description box below. I promise you it's coming. It is coming. If it's not live, it will be soon. Very soon. Anyway, I love you guys so much and you know what to do. If you found this video useful, entertaining, and learned something, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, this coffee break is over. Bye guys!